After a long battle with the federal government at the Justice Department and in the federal court, South Carolina succeeded in winning the right to implement the voter photo ID law. And they did that beginning January 1st of this year. The supporters will tell you that this law was necessary to protect the integrity of our elections. And as a poll worker, poll clerk, I want secure elections. They don't talk too much about the fact that there really were no examples of this fraud in South Carolina across the board. This is to protect what could happen. So the law is now in place. And remember, this is to protect the integrity of our voting system. Well, I just came earlier today from the clerk's class for the upcoming election on November 5th, city and special district, special purpose district like fire and water, sewer districts. And the law is fully implemented, and I was shocked to find out that the law, rather than protecting the integrity of our voting system, is actually hindering it, hurting it, harming it, and making it more vulnerable. Now, before you start yelling at me, supporters of this law, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. Let me start by saying this was not a voter ID law, meaning voters didn't have to show ID prior to this law. Voters have always, for I don't know how many decades, had to show a government-issued ID in order to vote. Remember, a little blue-green piece of paper that you got when you registered was a government-issued ID. And it's important to note that the procedures and the requirements to get that paper are exactly the same that you have to use to get a voter ID with a photo. We'll talk about that later. Nothing's changed about the requirements. The only difference is my ugly mug is on my voter ID. Now, so far, okay, not bad. People would say, supporters would say, well, you've got to use a photo ID in order to get on a plane, or in order to buy booze, or get Claritin. Why shouldn't you have it to prove who you are when you vote? There is a difference between those groups and voter ID. Let me tell you very specifically what a poll worker was looking for prior to this law. We had to make sure that the John Smith standing at the booth wanting to vote was the John Smith in this precinct, that he was eligible, that he was legal to vote in this precinct. Otherwise, guys named John Smith could go around and vote in any precinct that said John Smith. So we had to verify the address. It was John Smith of 500 Mulberry Lane. And sometimes people didn't get to vote because they couldn't verify that. But we were protecting the integrity of the voting system. With this law, voter photo ID, we included 3 IDs that are a problem. The U.S. passport. It shows the picture of the person standing in front of you registering, going ready to vote. But there's no address on it. Your military ID. Again, the photo's there, but no address. And the Veterans Administration benefit card. Again, no address. How does the clerk then verify that the John Smith standing in front of her, or him, is the John Smith on Mulberry Lane? Here's how, under this law, here's how we verify. Mr. Smith, are you the Mr. Smith that lives at 500 Mulberry Lane? Well, of course I am. I've lived there for many years. That's the verification. And guess what? It doesn't just apply to someone showing you an ID that has no address. If John Smith walks up to vote and the address on his driver's license is different from the address on the list, we read him the address on the list and say, Mr. Smith, do you still reside at 500 Mulberry Lane? Yes, I do. How is that verifying? It's not. It's opening up to a possibility of fraud. Because all a John Smith who wants to sway an election, if we use that idea, would have to do is go to every precinct and say, hey, I'm John Smith, I'm here to vote. And there's a John Smith in the books, they read him the address, yes, that's my address. We've now, not only do we have IDs with no address, so I can't verify that. Now I can't even verify hard copy that the person standing in front of me is actually registered in the precinct that they're voting in. You get a military ID. A guy could come from Washington, D.C., or Boston, or California, and say, hey, I'm ready to vote. My name's John Smith. And as long as there's a John Smith in the book and we read him that name, he's good to go. We had a solution to a problem that didn't exist, that in its actions created a problem. Not only do we have the IDs that don't show where someone lives, we also changed the rules. We're no longer verifying beyond somebody's spoken word. And we're using one of the most faked form of IDs, a driver's license. If this is an example of protecting the electoral system, we need to think something different. Because there wasn't a problem, and we created a problem with the solution. Now, here's the thing. The law is the law. It is the law of the land. And if you followed anything with us on Another Voice with Eric and Friends, you can find us at canIGetAWordIn.com. Monday nights is when we normally put the podcast up. You will know that I have said it's the law of the land. We follow it, or we repeal it. But we follow the law of the land until we repeal it. And I'm with this all the way. I don't believe this is going to change. I'm not even going to try to fight it because I don't think it'll be repealed. So you need to show your photo ID. November 5th, there's an election. City residents and special purpose districts. Check and see if you have to vote. If you're going to go vote, take a photo ID. Your driver's license, South Carolina issued. Your South Carolina issued or ID. Your voter registration with a photo. Your passport, your military ID, or your VA benefits card. Understand, they have to be current. If it's suspended or expired, it's not going to work. Now, I'm not happy with the law. I'm not happy that we actually made things worse. But I wanted to get you so that you can vote. That's my bottom line. I want everyone who is eligible to vote. One of the things that is good is that you can get a free voter ID card with your photo. You go to the county clerk's office. If you're in the Greenville area, it's right down at University Square. You will go in there using the same procedures that you did before. If you don't have a photo ID, and you can get for free a paper voter registration card with photo, and then the state later will send you a plastic one like a credit card. This is only if you don't have a driver's license or an ID or any of these other items. So I urge you, if you don't have that, to go on down. You can actually, on election day, if you don't have one of these IDs, you can go down to County Square, to the voter registration office, and get your paper photo voter ID. So I encourage you to do that. But folks, the bottom line to me is we need to think, not just knee-jerk reaction to problems, or in this case, non-problems, and pull away the simplicity and look at the facts. All right, until next time, make sure you look at canIGetAWordIn.com or go to Facebook at Another Voice with Eric and Friends. And until next time, get out in your community and make a difference.